Sorry, we don't carry anything that dark. The sentence landed harder than the associate seemed to realize. Or maybe she knew exactly what she was doing. The black woman stood still, one hand resting lightly on the glass counter, where rows of foundation bottles shimmered under bright white lights, from ivory to beige, beige to tan, and then nothing. Her skin, deep, rich, velvet-toned, wasn't just missing, it had been erased. She blinked once, not in surprise, but in calculation. She'd heard it before, in different words, different cities, different stores, but somehow it always sounded the same. You're not included. The sales associate, a white woman with slicked back hair and a black apron tied too tight around her waist, didn't even look up from her clipboard. She kept typing something, tapping her acrylics against the glass like the moment was already over. The woman looked down the row again, 43 shades, and not one that looked like her, not even close. She'd worn better coverage mixing drugstore brands in her bathroom mirror than anything the store had ever dared to stock. I see, she said quietly. A pause. You could try online, the associate added, her voice suddenly lighter, like she was offering a solution. Some of the darker stuff is exclusive to our e-commerce site. Behind them, a customer glanced up from a blush display. A woman by the fragrance wall shifted uncomfortably. Everyone had heard it, but no one said anything. Because that's how these moments usually go. Public, quiet, designed to humiliate without volume. The black woman adjusted the strap of her handbag. Her nails were sharp, painted oxblood red. Her blouse cream silk that caught the boutique lights like a whisper of wealth. She looked expensive. She looked composed. She looked like she didn't belong, at least not in their eyes. She didn't argue. She didn't correct. She didn't ask to speak to a manager. She just turned. The sound of her heels on marble echoed more loudly than the sales associate's voice ever had. Slow, precise, not rushing, not rattled, just leaving. Outside, the air was cooler. The wind pulled at her hem. She stood there for a second on the curb, staring at her own reflection in the boutique window, the glimmering glass showing rows of products and polished saleswomen moving around inside like nothing had happened. But something had, and she knew it. She took out her phone and opened her notes app. She typed a single sentence. If they won't carry it, I will. Then she walked away, not defeated, not broken, focused. She didn't cry. Not that night. Not the next one either. She didn't rant on social media or write an open letter to the brand that had humiliated her. She didn't demand an apology. She didn't have time for any of that. Instead, she opened a blank page in a fresh notebook, drew a thick underline across the top, and wrote in capital letters, "Things they don't think I'm supposed to do." Then she filled the page. She signed up for online business classes, free ones at first, then paid modules, then certifications. She studied brand strategy, supply chain logistics, wholesale markup structures. She watched YouTube tutorials on product formulation until 2 a.m. and taught herself how to pronounce ingredients chemists had spent years memorizing. Her days were still long, her job still paid what it paid. But her nights became different. No more Netflix, no more scrolling, just Google Docs, webinars, case studies. She read about the rise of Fenty, the fall of department stores, the gap in the market no one with power seemed to care about. She didn't just want her shade. She wanted the entire shelf. She wanted to build something that didn't ask anyone for space. It took it. She started reaching out to indie chemists on Instagram. Quiet brands with 5 posts and 3 formulas run by women in Detroit, Oakland, New Orleans. Some replied, some didn't. But the ones who did had something in common. They knew exactly what it meant to be overlooked in a billion-dollar industry. They spoke her language before she even introduced herself. In between her 9-to-5 shifts, she took meetings in coffee shops, Zoom calls in parked cars, phone calls while pacing the aisles of beauty supply stores. She kept a folder in her phone called Receipts and Reasons, filled with screenshots of brands that didn't stock her shade, reviews from customers asking for deeper tones. DMs from women who'd said, "Honestly, I just gave up." She didn't give up. She printed mood boards at home on cheap paper, taped them to her bedroom wall. A logo drawn in Sharpie, packaging sketches over takeout receipts, names of products that would sound like love letters to every girl who'd ever stood under fluorescent lights and heard, "We don't carry that." Her friends noticed the shift. She didn't go out as much, didn't always pick up on the first ring, but when she did answer, her eyes were clearer, her tone sharper. She wasn't angry. She was busy. There was no announcement, no launch countdown, no viral trailer, just slow, consistent fire building under her skin. The kind that doesn't burn out, the kind that doesn't need attention, the kind that becomes inevitable. While they were still stocking the same 30 beige bottles, she was building a brand with a shade range deep enough to feel like belonging. They didn't believe she'd do it. She did, quietly. And when it was ready, they'd hear her. Loud, the door chimed the same way it had before. Same boutique, same display tables, same rows of softly lit foundation bottles arranged like a luxury art exhibit. But this time, the energy walked in with her. She was dressed in a black tailored suit, no logos, no flash, just power cut clean into the seams. Her heels were sharper, her eyes colder. She didn't look around to see if anyone noticed her. She knew they did. Her presence wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It just took up space in a way that made silence follow her like a shadow. The sales associate, the same one, was behind the counter, typing something on a screen she suddenly seemed to forget how to read. Her eyes lifted and froze. Recognition hit slowly, like embarrassment stretching its fingers through her chest. The same woman she'd brushed off weeks ago now walked in like she owned the building. Because soon she might. The black woman didn't go to the counter. She didn't ask to be helped. She walked past the skincare shelves, past the table of new arrivals, and straight to the back, where the office door sat slightly ajar. A man in a navy blazer, one of the boutique's co-owners, glanced up from his laptop. He stood quickly, smiled too fast. "She's here," he called out over his shoulder. Within seconds, 2 more people joined him. A woman in a beige suit and another man with a binder in hand. They didn't waste time on greetings. They already knew why she was there. They'd been expecting her. After all, her team had sent over the numbers last Thursday. She'd done her homework. The boutique had strong branding, great foot traffic, and a loyal base of upper-middle clientele, but it was bleeding relevance. Their numbers were declining. Their social following had stagnated. They hadn't launched a new product in 8 months. The market was shifting beneath their feet, and she was offering them a lifeline. An acquisition offer, clean, efficient, fair. She'd keep the name for now. The branding would evolve. The inventory would change. The culture would definitely change. But the location was solid, and the space had potential. She wasn't coming in to burn it down. She was coming to elevate it into something that should have existed from the beginning. The co-owners exchanged a look. They knew they needed her more than she needed them. The sales associate, meanwhile, stood frozen near the counter. She hadn't spoken. She couldn't. Her face looked pale under the boutique lights. Hands fidgeting with the edge of a drawer, she kept looking over like she expected the black woman to lock eyes with her, to deliver some grand moment of revenge. But she never looked her way. Not once. She had outgrown the need to be seen by people who couldn't see her worth the first time. The meeting lasted under 20 minutes. Terms agreed, handshakes exchanged, a closing date set. As the woman turned to leave, she paused at the exit. Not for the drama, not for the audience, just long enough for the silence to settle. This time, no one said, "We don't carry that shade." Because soon, the entire store would. Opening day smelled like something new, not just fresh paint or the floral notes of restocked fragrance samples. It smelled like something else, like restoration, like justice. The boutique had been closed for 10 days, long enough for people to start whispering, but not long enough to forget what it had looked like before. The layout was similar, but the feeling was different. Softer in some places, sharper in others. The branding had changed. cleaner typography, new signage on the glass. But what drew attention the moment you walked in wasn't the logo. It was the wall. Foundation bottles lined it like armor. From the lightest ivory to the richest ebony, every undertone accounted for, every pigment celebrated. It wasn't just a shade range, it was a declaration. Rows of warmth, depth, golden, olive, red, blue, undertones that had once been called too tricky or unmarketable were now displayed like art, lit perfectly, easy to find. No one needed to mix or match. No one needed to apologize for the richness of their skin. The new staff stood ready, all shades, all backgrounds, smiling, attentive, trained not just in product knowledge, but in something far rarer in luxury beauty: respect. There were no clipboard glances, no gatekeeping at the door. No one asked if a customer had an appointment before saying hello. Behind the counter, the original sales associate had been replaced by a young black woman with waist-length braids and a glossy red name badge that said "Lead Artist." She greeted everyone like they were meant to be there, because they were. The first customer that morning was a teenage girl, maybe 16, with deep mahogany skin and a hesitant walk. She looked around the boutique like she expected to be followed. She paused in front of the foundation wall, eyes scanning the shades. When the lead artist approached and asked if she needed help finding her undertone, the girl looked up, startled, then slowly nodded. By the time she left, she wasn't walking like someone unsure. She was walking like someone who'd seen herself on a shelf for the first time. And that was the point. Word spread quickly. Within days, influencers were posting about the boutique that finally got it right. Women who'd stopped wearing foundation altogether showed up to get matched. Mothers brought daughters. Women cried in front of mirrors. The boutique was no longer a store. It was becoming something else. A mirror, a celebration, a safe place dressed in gloss and gold trim. And she, the woman who once walked out humiliated, now walked through as its architect. She didn't hover, she didn't need to micromanage. But her presence was in the details, the undertones labeled clearly. The campaign photos featuring every skin tone, wrinkle, freckle, scar. The slogan printed above the front entrance, "Every shade is the standard." She had taken the insult and turned it into a blueprint. Now, no one was told they were too dark. Now, no one was left out. And she made sure of it. The mural went up on a Wednesday. It took the installation team nearly 5 hours to hang the panels just right, each one perfectly aligned, each light measured, each shadow softened to let her face glow. Not with retouching, not with studio gloss, but with the quiet authority of someone who didn't need to pose anymore. She was simply there. Her portrait took up the entire front window. It wasn't an ad. It wasn't part of a campaign. It wasn't seasonal. It was a statement. She stood in profile, locks cascading down one shoulder, a warm highlight across her cheekbone, no smile, just power, and printed across the glass in clean, embossed letters, "The Standard." People stopped on the sidewalk. Some recognized her immediately, others didn't, not at first. They'd enter the boutique thinking she was a model, a brand ambassador, a symbol of something bigger than one woman. And in a way she was, but she was also very real, very local, and entirely in control. She owned the building now. The lease had been renegotiated under her LLC. The landlord, once indifferent, had shaken her hand with both of his, mumbling something about legacy and growth. The original boutique owners had long since moved on. One started a consulting firm. The other quietly disappeared into retirement. They didn't talk about what happened, not publicly. Inside the boutique, business boomed. The staff was tight, the shelves were full. The product lines expanded faster than expected. New launches sold out in hours. Her email list grew. So did her wait list, for press, for partnerships, for speaking gigs. They all wanted a piece of the story now, the one they'd ignored when it was still being written in silence. Every now and then, she would stand near the back, arms folded, watching as people came in, Women with skin like hers, like her mother's, like her grandmother's. Women with rich undertones that had never been seen in the right lighting until now. Teenagers who brought in pictures of her and whispered to the staff, "I want to look like her." She watched them get matched, watched them leave with their chins a little higher, and sometimes someone from the old days walked in. A former classmate, a coworker, once even the old sales associate, who paused for far too long in front of the mural, then walked inside pretending to browse. She didn't say anything. Neither did the owner. She didn't need to. Her face was already the answer. And she wasn't bitter. She didn't build this place to make a point. She built it to make room. Now, the girl who once walked into a boutique and was told, "We don't have your shade," had her face on the glass. And every person who walked through that door saw what beauty looked like in deep brown. Not as a trend, not as a token, but as the standard.